There are several hidden costs in music production that people just don't seem to talk about for some reason. I'm not even talking about like the normal stuff that you need to get started. Like, yes, you probably need an audio interface, a mic, something to listen back on, maybe even a MIDI controller. Right now, I just want to focus on the things that you'll probably spend your money on at some point that people just don't seem to talk about. So let's talk about software for a moment. While you do not need to go and buy every new shiny plugin that comes out, you're probably gonna at least want to get a fully featured DAW at some point, which is probably gonna cost you money. Also, from time to time, you may come across a plugin that may genuinely help you or save you time, and so it makes sense for you to spend money on that plugin at that moment. A couple of years ago, iZotope had a bundle on sale that included Ozone, Neutron, Nectar, and a couple of other really cool plugins. And while most, if not all, of the plugins that I used at the time were free, I'm so glad that I spent the money that I did on these plugins. I still use those plugins regularly to this day, especially Ozone and Nectar. Those two are huge time savers. And I'm a huge proponent of free plugins because there are so many out there, and honestly, you don't need to spend any money on plugins. But if you're like me, there's a good chance that at some point you're going to come across something and purchase it because it will genuinely make your job easier as a producer. Cables are another thing that we tend to spend money on, and it's honestly not the most fun way to spend your money as a producer. And here I have XLRs, 1/4 inches, 3.5 mil, ADAT, USB, various power cables, and then as you add more gear to your studio, there's a good chance you're going to need more cables to go along with that gear. You're also probably going to want to keep extra cables around just in case. It's not the most fun thing to buy, but you got to do what you got to do. I also want to talk about paying for other services because this one tends to sneak up on me from time to time. It can be really cool to pay somebody to play an instrument on your song, mix your track, even master your song, but it costs money to do so. Even if we're not talking about hiring actual people, you may be paying for an online service such as like AI mastering, which I did when I was first starting out before I got Ozone. And if you're into downloading stuff like sample packs, those are probably going to cost you some money too. I have a cinematic strings sample pack that's pretty epic if I do say so myself. I also have a couple of free sample packs that are centered around soulful piano and ambient guitar. If you want to check those out, there's a link in the description that'll take you there. It also often costs money to get your music out there and heard by other people. If you're operating as a business, you may want to pay for a website. If you're into selling beats, you may want to pay for a subscription on something like BeatStars or one of those marketplaces. And then there's distribution, where you get your music on Spotify, Apple Music, and all the other big platforms. And this one can be tricky sometimes because some distributors do payment on a subscription-based model, some do it on a per song basis, some take a cut of your royalties, and some give you 100% of your royalties. For the past several years, I've chosen to use DistroKid for this because it's an affordable subscription and I get to keep all of my royalties. If you want to check them out, there's a link in the description that's going to give you 7% off, so check that out. And before I get to the last item on this list, I just want to say thanks for making it this far in the video. If you're getting any value out of this video, consider leaving a like on the video and subscribing for more stuff like this. Now, let's talk about acoustic treatment. Unless you are exclusively using headphones to listen back to your mix and you have zero plans on ever recording something with a mic in your room, you should consider acoustically treating your room to some degree at some point. Now, I'm not going to sit here and try to tell you that it has to be a certain way or you have to spend a certain amount of money on this. There are pretty much options for every budget, and while I do believe that you get what you pay for, I also believe that something is better than nothing when it comes to acoustic treatment. Something like these GIK panels are well worth the money in my opinion, but if you don't have the money to spend on GIK panels, something cheaper like these AeroZoom panels will give you results at a much lower cost. I believe these are all things that tend to sneak up on us, and my hope is that you'll be able to keep this in mind, maybe if you're just starting out, or if you're planning on buying gear and you're trying to figure out how much to allocate toward your production budget. If you have any thoughts on this topic, make sure and leave them in the comments down below. And as always, thanks for hanging out.